Welcome in to One of One Sports, the only one for your original sports commentary and analysis. We are back to predict every first round game in the college football playoff. Let's get into it. All right, before we get started, it's been a minute. I think it's been a week since I've been able to upload a long form video to the channel, and things are kind of crazy. It was finals week at college, so obviously I was very busy with that, so been more just shorts, didn't have time to sit down, record, edit, all of that. But since we've been away, I did finally reach 300 subscribers, which was the goal. Technically, the goal was to hit it last week. We hit it this week, though, 1 week late, nothing too bad. So next goal, I think we're going to try to hit 500 subscribers, let's say by the end of college basketball season, because once we wrap this up, we're going to be transitioning to a lot more college basketball content, once we wrap up with transfer portal, all that stuff at the end here. So yeah, let's say 500 by, say, April. But that's a little ways off. For now, we got to focus on what is coming up this very week, because we are getting the first round matchups of the college football playoff, some of which are really big, some of which maybe not so big, but we're going to preview and predict each of these games and give you who I have winning. And we're going to start with the Friday night game, and that is Alabama traveling to Norman, Oklahoma in a rematch of the regular season game, which the Sooners won, and they actually won that game in Tuscaloosa. So now we get it flipped. Alabama trying to pay back the favor. Can they get a road win in a road Friday night game against the Sooners? So let's get into what we think the keys of the games are going to be here. And to start off with that, I want to review what the first game was like, because when you say, so-and-so beat someone on the road, usually you think of that as that team clearly showed they were superior to the other team, right? That's usually what a road win means in college football. Usually the better team isn't going to lose at home. But in this case, you could definitely argue that that's what happened, because when you're looking at post-game win expectancy rates, right, it's going to be like Alabama 96. And why is that? It's because there were I'm just going to sound redundant. I was going to say key critical plays, but obviously every critical play is key. Anyways, there were these key plays, critical plays that swung the tide, namely the turnovers in Oklahoma's favor. The biggest one, of course, being the Ty Simpson pick six. He doesn't throw that pick six, or if any of Alabama's other turnovers don't happen. If we get an even turnover game, Alabama outgained Oklahoma, passing the ball, running the ball. They converted more third downs. They had more first downs, right? Pretty much every aspect of the game, Alabama won except turnovers, and those were the difference. All Oklahoma did or had to do was get those turnovers, put themselves in a tight game where turnovers were the difference, and they won this game. And for Oklahoma, I would say it's not necessarily duplicable, repeatable, whatever you want to say, but they've done it multiple times. They beat Tennessee in a similar manner. And now they've proven in their last time we saw them playing LSU, which now was a couple weeks ago, even when they lost the turnover battle, they were still able to gut out a tough victory. So I do think that win does hold up as being very impressive, even if we want to write it off as it's kind of this flash in the pan, lucky turnover game. Like, Oklahoma's kind of been doing this. Now, I will say, if they have another LSU game where they lose a turnover battle like 3-1 or whatever it was, you're probably not going to beat Alabama. So I do think you have to at least break even in the turnover battle. And for Ty Simpson, this is a guy who for most of the year wasn't turnover prone at all, but then down the stretch, he had a big pick six against Oklahoma. And then in the conference championship game, he threw another really crucial interception that kind of helped Georgia build momentum, eventually pulling away, and things got kind of ugly, right? But it was still early in the game when Simpson threw that pick. So he has been throwing more interceptions than he was early. And with this Oklahoma pass rush, which is arguably the best in college football, it's at least up there, you'd have to say, especially if they're healthy and R. Mason Thomas is going to play. They're going to get after Ty Simpson, and you could be a strip sack. It could be another interception, right? Something has to happen where I think his defense has to wreak havoc, because we know Oklahoma is not going to rely on offense. And at this point in the season, I don't see any reason to think that would change. John Mateer, since that hand injury, you remember when at Haim, he broke the wrist, he came back early against Texas, threw the 3 interceptions, and that's not much different than the last time we saw him, where he threw 3 interceptions. He has not been the same player since that injury that he was before. And I know it's been 2 weeks. I don't think that's going to change it. I think this is a defensive-oriented team, defensive-driven team, that if they're going to win this game, it's going to be 17-14, 20-17. Like, if this thing goes into 20s, I think Alabama is going to win. And how can Alabama win this game? Well, it could happen a lot of ways, but I think one of the ways is just getting healthier, right? If they have Tim Keenan healthy, and if Jam Miller is going to be back, and if Ty Simpson is closer to 100% playing his best football, they have the wide receivers to challenge Oklahoma's secondary. With Horton, he's been playing really well. Jeremy Renard's been playing well all season. Ryan Williams hasn't played well down the stretch, but we know the kind of talent he has. And if they get it going, if he makes one big play, you could see the confidence come back, because he is still one of the most talented, and potentially, or on any given day, I would say, any given Saturday, in this case Friday, could be the best wide receiver on the field for Alabama. And when I point that out, it is the reason I am ultimately, even on the road, going to pick the Tide to win this game. I just think, given the time to prepare for Kalen DeBoer, given the dynamic weapons they have, I think it's going to be too much for Oklahoma to hold under 20. And I do think this 2-week stretch is better for the Tide than it is for the Sooners. Now, I don't feel great about this because I don't love the road game. I don't love that it's a night environment on a Friday. Like, all those dynamics are super tough. But I think the combination of Alabama getting healthier, of getting potentially the best level performance we've seen in multiple weeks, we could see a version of Alabama closer to that early season team where we saw them beating Missouri, beating Vanderbilt, beating, who else was in there? It was, I'm forgetting right now, but it was another ranked team, right? It was Missouri, Vanderbilt. This is crazy. I'm for Tennessee and Georgia, right? I think we could see closer to that version instead of the version that was losing to Oklahoma and Georgia and struggling with Auburn down the stretch. If we get that version, that team was one of the top 10, well, they're still one of the top 10, but was one of like top 5 teams in college football early in the season. I think we can get that, and I think the Tide can beat the Sooners. Give me a score of 24-17 Alabama. Next up, let's preview and predict Miami at Texas A&M. Now, the Hurricanes were done a huge favor here with this not being the night game, because at road at Kyle Field was maybe going to be too much for them to overcome. At least you got it in the morning, gives you a better chance for sure. And the keys to the game, number one is the elite edge rushers on both sides of the ball. Texas A&M has been amongst the leader in sacks all year. They may still be leading. At one point they were. I haven't checked where they are recently, but I know they're top 5 for sure. And a big part of that is Cassius Howell, 4th in the nation in sacks. He's going to have a big challenge against a really good Miami O-line, maybe the best O-line, individual O-lineman in college football, in Francis Mauigoa. Of course, he's at least amongst them. So it's going to be good on good up front. But A&M, if they get after Carson Beck, he's obviously not the most mobile guy. And we'll talk about it a bit, we do know Carson Beck can struggle in a game like this, especially if he is pressured, but it works both ways. Miami has arguably even better edge rushers, maybe not individually in sack numbers, but when you look at Azeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain, that's probably the best defensive end duo in all of college football. And I know Missouri's guys, Zion Young, Damon Wilson, have something to say about it. Like, I know there's other teams out there, but for my money, I would put it on the Hurricanes. And yeah, A&M has a really good O-line as well. They have not seen anything like this. I'm sorry. Like, I know Missouri has great defensive ends, like I just mentioned. I know they played Texas, who has Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. Like, there are some really good edge duos they faced, but I do think this is the best they've seen yet. And we also know that Marcel Reed, at least last time we saw him, looked the most limited he's been health-wise, and was still having some of those turnover issues. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I also just want to point out, A&M looked like a team down the stretch, to me at least, that was kind of running on fumes. You look like escaping South Carolina, just kind of not performing well at all against Texas, where they just looked to be clearly the better team. They were running the ball on you super well. They hadn't had 100 yards rushing in a game all season. Easily cruised past that against you guys. And Miami has a good O-line, has a good back. And if they are going to get the run game going, then you're opening yourself up for trouble, because Malachi Toney, best true freshman in all of college football, 2nd-team All-American, is going to challenge your secondary. And then you open it for like CJ Daniels, Keelan Marion. These guys can make plays as well. And Beck, if given time in the pocket, if not under pressure, can be surgical and actually played most of his best football in these latter parts of the season, unlike a Marcel Reed, who we saw, maybe the comeback against South Carolina was great, but the first half was bad. The Texas A&M game, like a lot of his worst games were actually at the end of the season. And that's a good transition into these quarterbacks, because they're going to be so crucial. For Marcel Reed, I think it's about what can you do with your legs, because if Marcel Reed is making plays against Miami on the ground, then that means they're probably going to be able to run the ball really well. And if Miami has to commit extra resources to the run game, Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion can absolutely burn the secondary for explosive plays. But for Miami, I don't think Marcel Reed is going to do very well on the ground. For starters, we don't know how healthy he is. And secondly, they've played a lot of mobile quarterbacks, none of which have been particularly effective. So I expect Marcel Reed to have to be in the pocket and beat you. And on Carson Beck's side, it's a lot of his games are really, really good. It's when it goes bad, it goes really bad. And I've said this many times, but you go back to Georgia, his last season at Georgia, in the Florida game, in the Texas game, in the Alabama game, all 3 interception games, right? Like when it went south, it went really south. You look at the Louisville game this year, 4 interceptions, right? When he doesn't go well, it can go really, really poorly. But if you avoid that, he's very accurate. He can drop back in the pocket. And if Miami can give him time, now that's a big if because of how good this pass rush is, I do expect him to play well. And it's not like it's a moment thing. It's not like the lights are too bright for Carson Beck. He's experienced. He's been in this stuff. It's just sometimes things aren't going well for him. And he's not a guy who's going to scramble around and extend plays. If he's off, he's just off and it can pile on. So you have to avoid that if you're the Hurricanes. Ultimately, for my pick, I do think these are super evenly matched teams. Like I said, both great pass rushes, both good on the line of scrimmage. They're going to be competing each other in that way. And also, I think A&M slight advantage home field. I do like Mike Elko better as a coach, so that gives the advantage to the prep time. So I was almost going Texas A&M here, but it just came back to the fact that I don't think A&M is going to be able to run the ball on a top 10 run defense in Miami. And if you're asking Marcel Reed to drop in back in the pocket, I think he's going to have a harder time with that than Carson Beck will. And I'm actually going to go with the Miami Hurricanes to go on the road into College Station in Kyle Field at, what is it going to be, like 10 a.m. in the morning, or not local to my time, it'll be like 10 a.m. and get the road playoff win in what I think is going to be a super competitive game. I'm going to go Hurricanes. Let's go 33-30 Miami. I think it should be the best game of round 1 in the college football playoff. But now let's talk about the games that probably aren't going to be the best of round 1. By that, I mean the G5 teams competing. And look, I'm not going to go on one of these rants about G5 teams shouldn't be in. I'm sure the playoff format will be tweaked. I do not like the fact that like everyone agreed these were the rules, and then when the ACC doesn't hold up their end by having a power conference champion that's good enough to get in the playoff, people complain about G5 teams. Like, it was clearly an ACC problem. But yeah, we have to deal with what we were handed, and what we were handed was that 2 of the 5 best conference champions were from the G5. One of those being Tulane, who's taking on Ole Miss in a rematch of a game they lost 45-10 in the regular season. And like, I don't even need to put keys to the game up really, because it's just so hard to see a path to victory. But what we're going to do is try to see, how does Tulane win this game? So first step would obviously have to be, you've improved a ton since that week, right? And I think part of the hope has to be with Lane Kiffin gone, this extra, curricular stuff for Ole Miss, maybe some players leave, staff changes, that Trinidad Chambliss in the offense just don't play as well, right? So they have a down game, and then their defense isn't the strength of the team. So if the offense is struggling, the defense is just having slightly below average game, then can Jake Retzlaff make plays on the ground, which opens up the pass, and you can get into a really good game with Ole Miss, right? That would be sort of the path. But the problem is, you're on the road. They've had multiple weeks. Yes, Pete Golding is the new coach, but he's been on the staff. And yes, Lane Kiffin's gone. Charlie Weiss, play caller, is still there. Trinidad Chambliss still there at quarterback. These receivers still there. Kewan Lacey, they can always just hand the ball to, and he'll get, 5 yards a carry. Like, that's all still there. And Tulane's pass defense, hasn't gotten any better necessarily since the last time. Like, they played decent against North Texas, which was impressive, but for, it's a 1-game sample. For the rest of the American season, they weren't one of the better passing defenses in the conference. So I just think they're going to struggle too much in the air. And even if they don't, Kewan Lacey's such a force at running back. Ole Miss has such a line of scrimmage advantage. I just can't see the Rebels losing this game at home. Give me Ole Miss. I'm sorry it wasn't much of a breakdown, but I mean, they won the first game 45-10. Like, I don't know what to say. There's no way I'm picking Tulane in this game. Give me the Rebels 38. I think it'll be a little bit closer than last time, 38-17. So improvement, but yeah, still not particularly close. And with that, let's transition to the last game of the first round, James Madison at Oregon. And this is another one where, like, I'm sorry, it's just not happening. It can't happen. James Madison played one Power 4 opponent this season, lost 28-14 to Louisville, where they just couldn't really throw the ball. And James Madison's a team that's a heavy run team, right? So are you going to bully Oregon? No, like, you're going to have to beat them through the air. Unfortunately for you, they have a top 5 pass defense. You don't have the requisite weapons to challenge them. You don't have a quarterback who's, positioned to push the ball downfield. And Barnett, he's more of a dual threat guy. And are you going to try to out-athlete like Mateo Uyangale on the edge and Bear Alexander on the inside? And like, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. Dylan Thiemann at safety, All-American. You look at Brandon Finney, true freshman, All-American, right? You look on the offensive side of the ball where Oregon is number 1 in yards per carry. They're going to run the ball on you, where they have standout offensive linemen like Emmanuel Pregnant, like Isaiah World, right? Dante Moore, I think, could be the best quarterback in the country if he's back next year. I think he's already amongst the best now. He may go to the NFL. He may be the top pick. They have getting even better because they're getting healthier. Like Malik Benson's been a guy who stepped up for them, but DeCorian Moore could be back. Evan Stewart could be back. Gary Bryant could be back. Kenyon Sadiq might be the best tight end in the country. Like the talent is all over the field. Oregon's been playing well down the stretch. They beat a bunch of really good teams. You beat SC, you beat Iowa, you beat Washington. All of which, none of which I should say, were, except with the exception of Iowa, were particularly challenging. And all those teams, I'm sorry to say, are better than James Madison. Now you're at home at night in Autzen Stadium, maybe the loudest stadium, getting there to host their first ever playoff game. There is absolutely no chance James Madison wins. I think this one gets really, really ugly. Give me Oregon 41-14. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a much better game, but I picked Oregon to win the national championship of the preseason. I picked them a couple weeks ago when the playoff bracket was revealed. So yeah, I'm not coming off of that, or at least not coming off of it for another week, especially if they are hosting James Madison as the 5 seed. And I'm really looking forward, of course, we'll break it down later, but I'm really looking forward to see them play Texas Tech. All right. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Like I said, we just crossed 300 subscribers. We're going to keep growing as a channel. I'd like you guys all to be a part of the ride, and we'll be back with more videos coming soon. We took a break, but we're going to be uploading all the time and covering all this college football, transfer portal, all of it that's coming up, still more coaching stuff. So make sure to stay tuned. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.